This presentation is about the housing inequality in Hong Kong. Of all the world's housing crises, Hong Kong's may be the scariest. The city of 7.3 million leads the world in housing prices and inequality. It's home to 125 and 100 millionaires and 1.6 million people living in poverty. House prices have soared by 187% in the last decade. The issue of housing problem in Hong Kong is apparent in these pictures, that the ones with low income have to be stuck in living environments of small spaces, poor sanity, low privacy, and high density. Coffin homes in Hong Kong refers to small, suppressed living spaces. Main residents in those units are of comparatively low income, immigrants, or the elderly. As government officials said it was necessary to set minimum standards for those units, under the circumstance that around a third of subdivided units do not meet the legal standard, it may lead to a large number of tenants being evicted, then at worst become homeless. K rents a 20 square foot bed for about 2,200 Hong Kong dollars a month. With housing prices soaring, they have no choice but to live in those cramped quarters. Despite new legislations aimed at improving living standards, these spaces continue to exist without significant government intervention, forcing residents to cope with high rents and poor conditions. In order to know more about the real situation of housing in Hong Kong, we interviewed some students and local residents of Hong Kong.
现在住在香港大学立基上堂，非常不方便，我非常讨厌那里。那里什么东西都没有，没有吃饭的地方，我需要去到天林地城才有东西吃。一个月差不多3000多。我的房子5平米，算是非常小的。我找我父母慢慢付这个房租的。 我希望政府可以為我們附加一個住房有區設施。
Based on the student interview findings, we concluded several key points about the housing challenges they face in Hong Kong. Firstly, transportation from school dormitories is often inconvenient, making daily commutes challenging. On top of that, students find it difficult to purchase groceries near its dorms, adding to their daily inconveniences. Additionally, the dormitories themselves are quite small. For instance, at Hysan Hall, rooms are only about 50 square feet. While some students choose to live with their parents, this option usually results in longer commuting times, such as the 15 minutes needed to reach the MTR station. Consequently, many students would like the government to provide more public housing specifically for non-local students, as finding affordable and comfortable housing options can be both expensive and challenging.
我这里住大概都10多年了，一般吧，楼宇就比较旧一点吧，交通方便，四通八达，还可以。大概300多尺吧。有的时候会拆墙方面，要是施政报告的话，有的时候他会优惠我们比较便宜一点。
就是针对香港居民的这个优惠。
对。
几十年了。 当然是不满意，但是有个住的地方，你不用交租金，那就已经是算不错了。那只有30来平，你要是要交房租啊，那起码得1万块。应该没有吧？他除非是你这个大厦做一个大的那个维修。 那么呢，那因为那个维修费呢，那就是5位数，那就几万块。那么政府呢会赞助你1半吧，大概就这样。
From our interview with local residents, we identified several significant points regarding their housing experiences. When they were younger, they faced substantial mortgage pressure, which took up a large portion of their living expenses. As they aged and owned a home, their expenses shifted mainly towards necessities like food and clothing. The government offers some subsidies for elderly people, covering costs like stamp duties and management fees for housing. However, a common concern among locals is that the house sizes are generally too small, adding to the challenges of living comfortably.
Beyond the housing challenges faced by the general population, low-income tenants in Hong Kong face even greater financial pressure. The tenants often have an income at daily 500 Hong Kong dollars and monthly a few thousand. The 2020 poverty line for one person is $4,400, while the May-June 2023 median monthly wage is at 19,800 Hong Kong dollars. Meanwhile, some tenants are paying rent for the subdivided units or coffin homes at 100 Hong Kong dollar per square foot. It's common knowledge that living expenses are rather high in Hong Kong. If tenants really get evicted from the flats substandard, available rented homes may be unaffordable to them as it will take up a much larger part of their income, leaving them with less money to spend on food, clothing, and transport. Although the Hong Kong government can provide temporary housing for those in poverty, the number of applicants on the waiting list applying for public housing compared with the available housing resources is far larger. Since some existing people on the waiting list have already been waiting for years, it is a concern for tenants whether the government could provide them temporary shelter at all. Since housing are provided to families in priority, the people covered under the policy are rather few. Migrant, double-knot families, and elderly tenants who are qualified for public housing but had lost the documents needed for application could be the people that need attention for care. In short, as the supply cannot meet the demand, inequality would occur. People might be listed in order to get housing depending on their family condition and citizenship. But for the majority, they will not get shelter at all. The units need to be rearranged so landlords evict them from their flats, and the tenants can make no way out but become homeless. The problem it occurs to be not fair for the tenants who have to move out, but have no other option for living. It can be seen from the interviewed tenants' words that they do not want to move, since there is no substitute shelter at the same cost. For landlords, their attitudes towards the new regulation depends on whether the policy would affect their profit. It is no doubt that, if their flats are substandard, they would have to ask the tenants to go and rearrange the space. This will block their way of income, thus making them have to spend money furnishing. We can look into the housing problem by dividing into two perspectives, the tenants and the landlords. Tenants face housing challenges mainly due to poverty. Those on the public housing waiting list need affordable options. The government could provide direct financial aid to help them afford better housing or increase public housing availability. However, limited resources and priority for families leave many still in need. For landlords, the problem lies in what to do when the flats really do need to be renovated. To meet their demand, either can the government support them financially or take over the whole renovation process and cover the cost. Direct financial support is effective but raises concerns about whether recipients will use the funds for housing. Limited government funds further complicate this approach. An indirect approach is to improve transportation between the new territories, Kowloon and Hong Kong Island. This could encourage low-income residents to live in more affordable areas. The government could partner with transit companies to offer discounts, easing the housing demand in Kowloon. The government needs to boost the economy as well. Improvements require funding. Working with transport companies may cost less than subsidies, but still requires investment. Economic growth would enable large-scale policies. A potential solution is to attract people and organizations by utilizing Hong Kong's strengths in business, healthcare, and education. Policy changes could attract more investment and talents, essential for economic growth.